When I was 12, I was crazy about horses. So on our family vacation that year, my parents indulged me with a trip to Kentucky where we visited several horse farms. While we were there, we went on a tour of Mammoth Cave, which is the world's longest known cave system. At one point, the tour guide stopped our group at what looked like a small amphitheater set into the side of the cave. We all sat down and then the guide turned out the lights so we could all experience absolute darkness. I was amazed, but I was also frightened, and I was glad I had a parent on either side of me because I had a healthy fear of the dark. Then the guide asked us to be very quiet so we could all experience cave silence within that darkness. That was quite impressive. Fast forward 62 years to a moment this fall when Melanie and I were talking about who knows what, when I said, you know that soft buzzing sound you hear when things are really quiet? To which, of course, she replied, no, what buzzing sound? In that moment, I was immediately transported back in time to the total darkness and silence of Mammoth Cave, and the devastating realization that I have, in all likelihood, never experienced total silence. It appears that I've suffered from tinnitus for most of my life without knowing it. So, since silence is an essential tool for finding stillness, and I've never really experienced it, one might draw the conclusion that what I'm talking about this morning might fall under the category of theory at best. But in my defense, I do know how it works, and honestly, before I awakened to the joys of tinnitus, I never once questioned my understanding of what silence was. This is proof that you don't know what you don't know. So with that disclaimer in place, let's begin at the beginning. Stillness is defined as the absence of movement or sound and the quality or state of being still. With no office to work in, no meetings to go out for, no restaurants to eat in, I found it all too easy to relax into the physical stillness afforded me by my recliner. But mental stillness has always been a real challenge. In his book, Second Chance, romantic fiction author Dave Senker describes my problem to a T. He says, the thoughts continue to tumble in my mind like clothes in a dryer. Some days it's so bad for me that it seems like tennis shoes and metal buttons are tumbling around with those clothes. But the kind of stillness we need to seek is not in the head. It's in the heart, in the soul. So somehow, we have to find a way to dive through that mundane laundry of the mind to reach what Saul Bellow once described as stillness in the midst of chaos, sort of like the eye of a storm. If we can learn to reach it, we'll find a place of tranquility that Hesse referred to as a sanctuary to which you can retreat at any time and be yourself. A necessary component of stillness is, as I said, silence or quiet. Silence is the absence of sound. If something makes no noise at all, it's silent. It's absolute. Most often, we probably have to settle for quiet, which means something not very loud. Quiet is not an absolute adjective, So you can say one thing is quieter than something else. So while I can never experience the absolute absence of sound that lies in silence, I can rest in relative quiet. I find I can settle myself fairly quickly with breathing. So I Googled breathing exercises, and the first thing that popped up was a 1-minute exercise Now, I invited the congregation to do this with me right now, and in somewhere on the page you're watching this, there will be a link to that exercise. You just watch a white circle and breathe in as it expands and breathe out as it contracts. Sometimes 1 minute of breathing is all that it takes to relax my mind and body. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "We are always getting ready to live, but never living. Southerners say they're fixin' to do something." My goodness, sometimes you can go on fixin' forever without ever getting to it, whatever it may be. My point is that to facilitate some kind of change in ourselves, we don't have to wait until the planets align and all the signs tell us now is the right time. We don't have to get into complicated positions or totally isolate ourselves in a special room or space outdoors or remember any complicated procedure to find our stillness. Because that stillness is already within us, readily available when we need it, if we know how to access it. There's no right or wrong way to go about this, and it may take a while to find something that works for you. It can range from a minute of breathing to full-blown guided meditation. The important thing is not to give up. The paradox of stillness is that there's movement in it. Even if all we do is to focus on taking slow, deep breaths, transformation is taking place. The heart rate decreases, oxygen in the blood increases, and blood pressure falls along with the stress hormone cortisol. If we start with only a minute or two a day, it's quite possible that the body will let us know, hey, this is a pretty good thing, we should do it more often. The power that we receive through stillness of mind and the interior movements or changes in our body is far greater than the disorder and commotion that often surrounds us. And this creates another paradox, that of stillness in movement. Bruce Lee said, "The stillness in stillness is not the real stillness. Only when there is stillness in movement does the universal rhythm manifest." Martial artists must retain an unrushed presence in mind and body when under immense pressure from their opponents. They know their opportunity to counter will come if they just keep their minds still under fire. If we learn how to use the power of stillness in motion, we can slip into the sanctuary of our soul anytime, any place we like. Pumping gas, standing in line at the grocery store, washing dishes, during Zoom meetings, watching the news, any time or place is fair game for using the stillness within us to cope with the distracting motion around us. If we can learn to hold on to that power within us, if we can create an intention of stillness, it's possible to bring the quality of stillness to everything we do, to approach every aspect of our life from a place of calm. In her book, Gift from the Sea, Anne Morrow Lindbergh tells about wanting to live in grace. She writes, "I am not using this term in a strictly theological sense. By grace, I mean an inner beauty, essentially spiritual, which can be translated into outward harmony." She was seeking a way to remain whole in the midst of the distractions of life. She understood how difficult it was for women, particularly women with families, to find time to be alone, time in which to discover the grace that leads to harmony. Suggesting that Virginia Woolf didn't go far enough in her stated desire for a room of one's own in which to think and write, she says, "The problem is not entirely finding a room of one's own, the time alone, difficult and necessary as that is. The problem is more how to still the soul in the midst of its activities. In fact, the problem is how to feed the soul." It is through stillness that we're able to access the soul, which lies deep within the sanctuary of the self. It is the essence of who we are. So what does feed the soul? Many things come to mind: music, poetry, nature, pets, exercise, family, helping others, good relationships with friends. The list is endless because soul food is different for each of us. For example, I doubt very seriously that hardware stores feed many people's souls, but they do a darn good job for me. Although it's different for each of us and maybe even frightening for some, self-reflection is an essential part of stillness. Because we know ourselves, because until we know ourselves, we can't be fully present to others. Creative life coach Janice Taylor advises clients to look beneath the iceberg, investigate what lies below, as only 1/7 of you is above water. Because we're not absolute creations, but are constantly in process, self-reflection can provide us with a lifelong voyage of discovery as we explore the 6/7 of ourselves that lie below. Anything that passes through the soul contributes to our spiritual growth and helps us find and fulfill our purpose. All of these good outcomes begin with learning to tap into and understand the power of motion in stillness and the stillness in motion. I close with the words of the great conductor and composer Leonard Bernstein. Stillness is our most intense mode of action. It is in our moments of deep quiet that is born every idea, emotion, and drive which we eventually honor with the name of action. We reach highest in meditation and farthest in prayer. In stillness, every human being is great. May we all achieve greatness. Amen.